The land explored by our ancestors extends from the Altai to the White Sea. The scientific expedition, Trails of Nomads, continues to unveil the path of our forefathers. A group of scientists led by pilgrim of the 21st century, Sakas, has already visited more than 50 countries. Scientists reveal the exciting secrets of the past. Watch an amazing story of a great journey in the Trails of Nomads program. Today's Trails of Nomads episode presents: what documentary evidence confirms that Altai is the ancestral home of the American Indians, Pima and Sakas? What do these two tribes have in common? Do the petroglyphs on Kitt Peak Mount prove the Indians' faith in the god Tengri? Where did the first humans appear? How did the history of mankind begin? Many generations tried to find answers to these questions. Taking into account the pace of science and technology development, they will be revealed in the third millennium. One of the means in this genetic research is DNA tests. Now researchers review some conclusions made earlier. Based on scientific evidence, some scientists competently state that the human race has spread from the ancestors of the ancient Turks. The participants of the expedition Trails of Nomads are becoming more convinced of this. This time, they continue their work overseas, in America. The Indians, who are the first settlers of this continent, consider Altai their ancestral home.
Ғалымдардың айтуы бойынша, Америкада ғалымдары, Ресейде ғалымдар айтуы бойынша, бұларда бұл үндістердің Алтайдан келгені дәлелденген.
American and Russian scientists scientifically proved that the Indians come from Altai. They moved in several stages. First people came 40,000 years ago. They settled in southern Latin America, Chile, and Argentina. Then there was a second stage 25,000 years ago. These were the Incas. The next stage took place 8,000 years ago. These are the peoples of Central America, Mexico. But the latest ones are those who resettled approximately 3,000 to 4,000 years or even 5,000 years ago. These are the Indians of North America and Canada.
Орталық Америка, сосын Мексиканың жеріндегі халықтар. Ал енді ең ақырғы келген толқын бұл енді 3,000, 4,000, мүмкін 5,000 жыл бұрын. Бұл енді солтүстік Америка мен Канадада тұрған үндістер.
There was no Bering Strait during the Great Migration of Peoples. Two continents were interconnected by an 80-kilometer isthmus. Along this strip of land, the Altai peoples migrated to America. This also speaks of belonging to a nomadic culture. Prior to the trip to America, head of scientific expedition Sakas met with the famous scientist, statesman, and public figure Adil Akhmetov. This is a person who has been studying this topic since the 90s of the last century. He also believes that the ancestral home of the American Indians is Altai.
Американы ашқан жаңағы Колумб емес, прототюрктер, біздің бабаларымыз ашты.
In fact, America was not discovered by Columbus, as many believe. America was discovered by the tribes who were our ancestors. They went to the east from Altai. According to archaeologists, the history of mankind in America does not exceed 40,000 years. I have studied this question. I got acquainted with the works of archaeologists, linguists, with the results of the work of various expeditions. In the end, I completely agree with this hypothesis. The ancestral home of the American Indians, indeed Asia, and everything indicates that it is Altai. Participants in the scientific expedition began their work in America with a visit to the center of Arizona in Phoenix. In the neighborhood are the cities of Scottsdale, Tempe, Mesa, Fountain Hills. All of them belong to the Salt River, Pima, Maricopa Indian community. This is an association that performs the functions of the state. It was formed back in 1879 on June the 14th. It consists of the representatives of the Indian tribes of Pima and Maricopa. That is, they have sovereignty. They have every opportunity to study and develop their culture and language, and this memorial complex is proof of this. Head of expedition, Saparskakov drew attention to fragments of cave paintings at the entrance to the museum.
Мен бірінші байқағаным, мынау тасқа жазылған суреттер. Бізде де бар Қазақстанда.
The first thing I noticed was these drawings on the stone. We also have similar historical monuments. There are more than 1,000 similar drawings in the Tamaulipas tract. They date from different times. The most recent may date back to the 19th and 20th centuries. The most ancient were made 4 to 5 and even 8,000 years ago. The last Indians who moved from Altai to America were representatives of the Pima tribe belonging to the Pueblo group and the Hohokam archaeological culture. They call themselves Akimel Odam, which means river people. Most are concentrated in central Arizona as well as in its southern part. In addition, there are people living in the Mexican state of Sonora. Given the data of DNA analysis, the closest people to the Kazakhs are the Pima tribes. The museum has a lot of exhibits which are also very similar to objects that Kazakhs use. For example, clay dishes, particularly jugs with a Koshkar Muiz ornament.
Бұлардың жағы кувшиндері, оның сыртындағы суреттер, одан кейін мата тоқығандары, олардың жағы станоктары мата тоқыған.
Jugs of the Indians with ornaments are very similar to our crafts. They also had a very large irrigation system, and we had the same. In general, this is a great similarity.
Суаратын. Бұндай суаратын жағындай арық қазу бізде де болды. Содан баяғы ұқсастығы бар.
Although the engineering of the prehistoric canal system was complex, the construction of the canals was accomplished using simple tools made of stone and wood.
The land will thank you for caring. Representatives of the Pima tribe adhere to this principle. The main type of their activity was irrigated agriculture. They settled along the rivers and built canals for irrigation. This centuries-old experience is used until today. Similar methods of work were used by our ancestors in the south.
But this canal right here is a historic canal. But they built the historic canals on top of the Holcomb canal system. You saw inside the museum that whole extensive thousands of miles of canals in order to, they grew corn, beans, squash, amaranth, and some cotton. So, and then they traded extensively down into Mesoamerica and up north into the Pueblos. So there was a lot of trade and a lot of movement.
Pima is a very peaceful people. Perhaps a sedentary lifestyle affected them. They never raided foreign lands, but others more than once encroached on their land. For example, representatives of the Apache tribe claimed the natural wealth of this region. As a result of the disputes and wars, part of the land was lost. However, despite this, the Pima tribe was the founder of one of the most developed states of that time.
Құрылыс ретінде байқағаным, бұлар кәдімгі сазды араластырып, қиыршық тастарды мен.
As a builder, I noticed that they made a solution of clay and gravel and built houses. The houses had 4 floors. They stood for 7 centuries. Some survived until the 14th to 15th centuries before the arrival of the Spaniards.
Сақталған. Кейбір үйлер мынау 14-ші, 15-ші ғасырға шейін мына испандықтар келгенше шейін сақталған.
From Phoenix, members of the Trails of Nomads scientific expedition went to the city of Tucson. Travel time took about 2 hours. Tucson is the administrative center of the district, which was named after Pima tribe. Therefore, it is clear that the majority of representatives of this people reside here. At the same time, many people call themselves Tohono O'odham, that is, people of the desert. These are the Papago Indians. Pima and Papago are kindred tribes. They have similar languages and cultures. One can understand that they have one root, Altai. bright evidence is the petroglyphs.
Мұнда да мен жаңа байқағаным, адамдар бар, адамдардың басы күннің бейнесі сияқты салынған. Бізде де сондай.
Drawings depict people with a head that resembles the sun, and we have similar petroglyphs in Tengri Tas, near Almaty. I think that two cave paintings appeared in the same time.
Жаңа таңбалда пайда болған петроглифтердің шамамен уақыттары бірдей деп ойлаймын.
Petroglyphs are located on the top of the Kitt Peak Mount in the Sonora Desert. Representatives of the Papago tribe consider this place sacred. Here, the local Indians, who were called people of the desert, took refuge from the long summer heat. By the way, this is also one of the elements of a nomadic lifestyle. Kazakhs also roamed the Zhailao in the summer and hid from the winter cold in Kistau, located at the foot of the mountains. Both Indians and Kazakhs adapted to natural and weather conditions, so they wandered. Moreover, both nations made a weather forecast looking at the movement of stars in the sky.
A much more friendly environment with more animals, more rainfall. Finding enough to eat wasn't as great a challenge for them. But for the Hohokam people here, just living through the heat of the summer.
A man with a head in the form of the sun on the cave paintings speaks of the beliefs and worldview of the Papago tribe. They worshipped the god Tengri. That is, the sun means the desire of the people to know one god. On the other hand, the correct depiction of the sun is a sign of good scientific knowledge, and the image of a head in the form of the sun speaks of a man as a creature with special qualities. Indeed, thanks to the mind, man has reached great heights in the development of science and technology. Now, in the sacred place of the Papago tribe, on the top of the mountain is the National Astronomical Laboratory, Kitt Peak. And this, of course, is not an accident.
One of the things that was done here at Kitt Peak in the early 1970s, using the telescope, we can see through the trees over here, was study of solar radiation for the International Space Station. So that when the cosmonauts and the astronauts were on the International Space Station in the 1970s, they could be warned about sudden increases in solar radiation, so they would not be outside doing their extravehicular activities, their EVA. They would go inside where they were sheltered until the radiation went by. And that was one of the missions of this observatory, was to keep monitoring solar radiation for their safety.
Descending from the Kitt Peak Mount, participants of the scientific expedition Trails of Nomads came across a jewelry store. Here, tourists can buy national jewelry of the Indians. Rings, bracelets, pendants are decorated with very beautiful national patterns. These masterpieces are amazing. The skill of jewelers is simply surprising. This is clear because the ancestral home of artisans is the great Altai. The Indians here did not use iron as on the land of their ancestors. The main material for their products was silver and gold. Now the young generation is reviving all the past traditions.
Our traditions are coming back, I would say. Like again, it's taught in the schools, the culture, the history, the language. We call that himata. It's our traditions. There's ceremonies that we perform throughout the year, different times of year, every 4 years, that have come back as well. There are very few people that were practicing them throughout all this time, but now there's a resurgence of it. So that's something that the tribe is very proud of.
Head of scientific expedition Sapar Iskakov found another similarity in the culture of Indians and Kazakhs. For example, here one can see a horse depicted on this bracelet. Given the fact that the horses were first tamed on the territory of the Great Steppe, this confirms that the roots of the Indians are indeed from Altai. And of course, drawings of animals and birds on jewelry, which are called animal style, are characteristic of Asians.
Other tribes here in Arizona, there are people that have the Oriental features as well. There's some in our nation and some in the, most prominently in the Navajo and White Mountain Apache, San Carlos Apache area.
Having completed their work in the city of Tucson, participants of the scientific expedition Trails of Nomads went to the north of Arizona. One of the deepest canyons in the world is the Grand Canyon. A lot of tourists come here to admire the beauty of the river valley, but the group of Kazakhstan scientists has a different task: to explore the science of their relatives, Indians. The local culture in Spanish is called the Chinagua. If translated into Kazakh, it means Su Jok, that is, there is no water. The author of this name is the founder of the Museum of Northern Arizona, archaeologist Harold Colton. But nevertheless, it is difficult to say which representatives of the particular tribe lived in this cave. Some scholars suggest that they were the Indians who inhabited central Arizona. The center was mainly inhabited by representatives of the Pima tribe.
Ғалымдар әртүрлі қылып айтады. Басқа жақтан келген халық дейді. Сусыз жердің халықтары дейді.
Scientists speak differently. They say that those were people who came from another land. They were also called the people of the desert. In my opinion, there can be many different reasons for why people moved here. Perhaps this was due to wars or natural disasters, famine. Perhaps there was a drought. There was no rain, water. The crop did not degenerate. Or the ancestors of the Indians moved here a very, very long time ago in antiquity.
Енді үшінші жағдай, бұлар өте ерте заманда келген адамдар болуы мүмкін.
People adapted caves for housing. They had many different rooms. These dwellings have survived to this day. The walls of the rooms were separated by stone. Indians were good builders. People lived in such houses for about 130 years, from the end of the 12th to the beginning of the 14th century. No one knows where and why they left this place. Scientists have many assumptions, but first of all, such relocations were peculiar to a nomadic tribe.
People that lived here, they left the canyon a little bit at a time for different reasons, many reasons.
Yeah.
Too much rain in the monsoons in the summer, not enough rain.
Yes.
Hard to grow crops up there. Too much snow. Then you think maybe very icy, and maybe little children slip and fall, and little children die or something. Then they leave to go move safer places. Lots of reasons.
There are several sites in the gorge that belong to the Chinagua petroglyphs. According to scientists, this is an ancient calendar printed on a stone. To determine the agricultural seasons, the Indians watched the movement of the sun and the data was applied to the stone. For example, during harvesting or reaping, the shadow from neighboring stones fell on the corresponding drawing on another stone. This is how the Indians from Altai studied the environment and contributed to the development of world science. The world should know about this, the scientific expedition team believes. Therefore, they went to distant America.
Бұлар сезіну керек. Бұлардың тұқымы түріктер. Бұлардың шыққан жері Алтай. Сондықтан біздің жағымызда жақындық болу керек. Сондықтан біз үлкен халық ретінде мынау.
Of course, they should know that they have Turkic roots and their ancestral home is the sacred land of Altai. We can provide support. We, as the main heirs of the Turks, should encourage the study of our roots by kindred peoples, especially the Indians of the United States, who consider themselves very lonely. Therefore, all Indians from different regions need to communicate with each other. Now, there are a lot of Indians in Mexico, Central and Latin America.
Біз қарым-қатынас жасау керек. Мысалы, Мексикада бұлар уже өте көп бұрынғы үндістер. Мексика, мынау орталық Америкада көп тұрады. Латин Америкасында көп тұрады.
Having visited the ancient site of the Grand Canyon, the Trails of Nomads scientific expedition team headed for the city of Page. The Navajo Indians live there. In the next episode, we will speak about the similarities of these tribes with the Kazakhs.